Let's move on and look at the next topic, which is the types of problems solved using machine learning. Now, this is what we were talking about earlier when I said regression, classification, and clustering problems. Okay, so let's discuss what exactly I mean by that. In machine learning, all the problems can be classified into three types, right? Every problem that is approached in machine learning can be put into one of these three categories, okay? So the first type is known as regression. Then we have classification and clustering. So first, let's look at regression type of problems. So in this type of problem, the output is always a continuous quantity. For example, if you want to predict the speed of a car given the distance, it is a regression problem. Now, a lot of you might not be very aware of what exactly a continuous quantity is. A continuous quantity is any quantity that can have an infinite range of values. Okay? For example, the weight of a person, it is a continuous quantity because our weight can be 50, 50.150 e, 150,002, 150.0321, and so on. It can have an infinite range of values, correct? So in the type of problems that you have to predict a continuous quantity, you make use of regression algorithms. All right? So regression problems can be solved by using supervised learning algorithms like linear regression. Next, we have classification. Now, in this type of problems, the output is always a categorical value. Now, when I say categorical value, it can be values such as the gender of a person is a categorical value. Okay? Now, classifying emails into two classes like spam and non-spam is a classification problem that can be solved by using supervised learning classification algorithms like support vector machines, naive Bayes, logistic regression, k-nearest neighbor, and so on, right? So again, the main aim in classification is to compute the category of the data, right? Coming to clustering problems, this type of problem involves assigning the input into two or more clusters based on feature similarity. Now, as soon as I read this sentence, you should understand that this is unsupervised learning, right? Because you don't have enough data about your input, and the only option that you have is to form clusters, right? Categories are formed only when you know that your data is of two types. Your input data is labeled and it's of two types. So it's going to be a classification problem. But when a clustering problem happens when you don't have much information about your input, right? All you have to do is you have to find patterns, and you have to understand that data points which are similar are clustered into one group, and data points which are different from the first group are clustered into another group, right? That's what clustering is. An example is in Netflix. What happens is Netflix clusters their users into similar groups based on their interest, based on their age, geography, and so on. Right? This can be done by using unsupervised learning algorithms, like k-means. Okay, so guys, those were the three categories of problems that can be solved by using machine learning. So basically, what I'm trying to say is all the problems will fall into one of these categories. So any problem that you give to a machine learning model, it will fall into one of these categories. Okay? Now, to make things a little more interesting, I have collected real-world datasets from online resources. And what we're going to do is we're going to try and understand if this is a regression problem or a clustering problem or a classification problem. Okay? Now, the problem statement in here is to study the house sales dataset and build a machine learning model that predicts the house pricing index. Now, the most important thing you need to understand when you read a problem statement is you need to understand what is your target variable. What are the possible predictor variables that you'll need? The first thing you should look at is your target variable, right? If you want to understand if this is a classification regression or clustering problem, look at your target variable or your output variable that you're supposed to predict here. You're supposed to predict the house pricing index. Now, house pricing index is obviously a continuous quantity. So as soon as you understand that, you know that this is a regression problem, right? So for this, you can make use of the linear regression algorithm and you can predict the house pricing index, right? Linear regression is a regression algorithm. It is a supervised learning algorithm. We'll discuss more about it in the further slides. Let's look at our next problem statement. Here you have to study a bank credit data set and make a decision about whether to approve the loan of an applicant based on his profile. Now, what is your output variable over here? Your output variable is to predict whether you can approve the loan of an applicant or not. So obviously your output is going to be categorical, right? It's either going to be yes or no. Yes is basically approved loan, no is reject loan, right? So here itself, you understand that this is a classification problem, okay? So you can make use of algorithms like KNN algorithm, or you can make use of support vector machines in order to do this. So support vector machines and the KNN, which is nearest neighbor algorithms, are basically supervised learning algorithms. Right. We'll talk more about that in the upcoming slides. Moving on to our next problem statement here. The problem statement is to cluster a set of movies as either good or average based on their social media outreach. Now, if you look properly, your clue is in the question itself. The first line itself says to cluster a set of movies as either good or average. Now guys, whenever you have a problem statement that is asking you to group the data set into different groups or to form different clusters, it's obviously a clustering problem, right? Here you can make use of the k-means clustering algorithm, and you can form two clusters. One will contain the popular movies, and the other will contain the non-popular movies. Right? These are small examples of how you can use machine learning to solve clustering problems, regression and classification problems. The key is you need to identify the type of problem first, right?